Hello and welcome to another video. Now today I have a dish that's guaranteed to impress. This comes from the US. It's a bit of sort of American high cuisine, if you will, but this is an absolutely delicious pasta recipe. And I've made my own modifications to it. We'll talk about those as we go, but this is going to be my version of spaghetti with red wine and walnuts. Now the ingredients of this dish are pretty simple. I have spaghetti. This is about almost 200 grams. We have a red wine. I've chosen a French cloves. I've chosen this one because it has a nice deep full flavor. You really want a full-bodied, full-flavored wine here. And it's worth noting that since this comes from the US, American wines tend to be heavier in flavor than European wines generally. So if you don't see one you like, I would say go with like a nice Spanish Rioja or an American Zinfandel or something. I have a nice, good, large handful of walnuts. Maybe half a teaspoon or so red pepper to taste, and 2 cloves of garlic, and I have some butter. And believe it or not, that's all we're going to use, and a little salt, and away we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crush these nuts. And if you don't have a nice rock like I do, you could use a molcajete or an ulek. You can also just take the nuts and put them through a food processor to chop them up, and then maybe pound them just a little bit in a mortar and pestle. But as you'll see, you know, this is a reason why I love using a couple of different rocks in the kitchen. This just makes really fast work of the walnuts. So I'm going to go ahead and pound these until they're kind of a nice consistency, and then I'll be right back. So in just a couple minutes, I've managed to mill these very nicely. And pounding them makes them a little bit oily and a little bit sticky, and that's exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead and use this. Next I'm going to peel the garlic, and I'm going to basically chop it really finely, and I'll be ready to add it to the butter as we go forward. So I've added about 2 tablespoons, that's maybe, I don't know, 20 grams or so of butter, and now I'm adding my garlic to that. And I'm going to stir this until it becomes really fragrant, at which point I will add the walnuts. Most of the walnuts. I'll reserve a little bit for garnish later. So now I can smell the garlic. So I'm going to add just a little bit of salt and most of my walnuts. And I'm going to start stirring these together. Now the walnuts are expected at this point to soak up most of the butter and to continue to toast a little bit. Once that's done, once the consistency is kind of stabilized, then I will start pouring in the red wine. Okay, the consistency seems pretty stable. So I'm going to pour in 400 milliliters of red wine. And I'm going to turn this up to high, and as soon as it gets up towards a boil, I'm going to add the spaghetti. I just noticed I forgot to add my red pepper, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Stir it in. Okay, so now it has just started boiling. I'm going to add the spaghetti, and I'm going to, this will take a few moments, but I'm going to go ahead and just slowly push it into the liquid. If a few of them break, that's fine. And you can, if you want, add a little bit more water. Typically, I tend to add more water only when this actually starts getting noticeably dry. So I might add just a little bit now, but not much. You could also add a small amount of red wine at this point. Maybe I'll do that, just a little bit. And then as this cooks, it will absorb some of the water and or some of the wine, and this will add a lot of flavor. So we're going to go ahead and cook it like this and see how it comes out. Now it's worth noticing a few things that are going on here. There's some starch coming out of the spaghetti, which is going to help thicken the sauce. The walnuts also are an emulsifier, so along with the butter, the walnuts will help the red wine and the butter form together into a sauce. And the red wine is sort of infusing the entire noodle mass, so that when this is done cooking, it's going to have a really rich flavor. Now, as the amount of liquid gets reduces quite a bit, eventually I'll add more butter. And then we'll see the sauce really start to form. But you can see it is just slowly on its way, but this is going to be really good. So the pasta is now very al dente, and the sauce is just starting to thicken a bit. So I'm going to give it another couple minutes, and then I am going to add more butter. Look at that. That's looking pretty incredible. So the sauce is definitely starting to thicken now. So I'm going to add another couple tablespoons of butter. Total butter for this is maybe 50 grams, maybe probably less than that. And I'm then going to stir this all in. And as I do this, eventually the butter will dissolve into the sauce and we'll get something pretty thick. And the pasta is going to continue to cook in the sauce pretty much right until we serve it. So if the pasta doesn't cook enough, just add a hair of water and just keep cooking it until you get it the consistency you want. You can repeat adding, a couple tablespoons of water at a time if you need to. But yeah, this is looking. Look at that. Just look at that. So on to presentation, I'm going to take my tongs and I'm going to go ahead and create nice swirls of the pasta on a plate. And then I'm going to top it. Come right back for that. So with that done, I'm going to take my vegetable peeler and put some nice parmesan. And I guess since this is an American dish, you could use something other than parmesan. But I really like Parmigiano Reggiano for this. So put some pieces up there, and then sprinkle walnuts on top. And then let's garnish it with something green. So for the green garnish, I've decided to use a piece of lovage. Lovage, for those who remember, is very similar to celery, And celery is foundational to Italian cooking. Well, this is American rather than Italian. It reminds people of Italian food, so the lovage goes very well. Anyway, here we have our red wine pasta with walnuts. And now for the taste test. So, I made this definitely on the spicy side, but these flavors go together very, very, very nicely, and there's an amazing complexity to the flavors that develop here. It's an extraordinarily delicious dish. I strongly recommend that you try making it yourself. Now, one modification that I've seen in some recipes is to boil the spaghetti just a little bit, maybe, anywhere from 2 minutes to, 5 or 6 minutes before moving into the red wine. That changes the texture a little bit. So try it both ways, see which one you like better. I really like it this way. So, bon appetit. If you have questions or comments, feel free to add them. I try to respond to every single comment. Feel free to share the channel, see if there's anybody else that might also appreciate such recipes, and subscribe if you'd like to see new content. Anyway, bon appetit, thank you for watching, and see you next week.